Hi, this is David McCann for WebTNG. In this video, I'm taking a look at the free Loops and Logic plugin from Tangible. Loops and Logic is a code-centric templating toolkit that includes support for advanced custom fields. You can use Loops and Logic like a theme builder to create single and archive content templates. And it also comes with a Gutenberg block, an Elementor widget, and a Beaver Builder module so that you can place Loops and Logic templates pretty much anywhere. Some people may want to build their entire site with it, but many people will use it to create custom views of their content to fill in the gaps of Gutenberg or their page builder. If you like the video, please subscribe. It helps to spread the word about the channel. This is Loops and Logic in the WordPress plugin directory. You can see it's regularly updated. It has more than 1,000 active installs, 25-star reviews, and 3 out of 3 support issues have been resolved in the last 2 months. This is the Loops and Logic homepage. You see here they have a little code example, and the syntax for Loops and Logic is a mix of regular static HTML tags together with dynamic Loops and Logic tags and dynamic data attributes. So here's an example where you have a regular unordered list with a list item and an anchor. Intermixed with that is you have a dynamic loop and a dynamic field value. Okay, so you can get the idea that you use Loops and Logic to build templates that work with dynamic data. Go down just a little bit further. Here it says you can use it as a theme builder with layouts. You can load Loops and Logic templates with shortcodes in addition to using Gutenberg, Elementor, or Beaver Builder. It has integration with WP Fusion. You can pass variables to CSS and JavaScript. It has support for Sass. And then everything that I'm going to show you is in the free version, but they are preparing a pro extension that'll have integration for WooCommerce, Gravity Forms, Easy Digital Downloads, LearnDash, Lifter LMS, and the events calendar. They have a discourse forum for Loops and Logic, and this is the knowledge base for Loops and Logic. For example, here is the list of dynamic tags and the documentation for them. You see that there is support for if-else conditional logic, and then there are a number of types of loops. There's your basic post loop, which you would use for posts, pages, custom post types. But then there's attachment, which you use for media. Have a calendar loop, menu loop, taxonomy and taxonomy terms, user loops. Very flexible. The documentation site is pretty extensive. There's quite a bit of documentation. Starting out, you'll probably refer to these pages quite a bit. Okay, so here's my testing site. I'm using the free Cadence theme. You can see I have advanced custom fields and custom post type UI installed. I use these to create the book's custom post type. Then here's Loops and Logic, which is also active. Then we have Beaver Builder, the free version, and the free version of Elementor also, but I haven't activated them yet. We'll use these later on for a quick look to see how you add a template inside of these builders. I have a number of book records, and what we'll want to do is create a listing of book records. So we'll include in our listing the title, the featured image, which is a picture of the book cover, an excerpt, and these 2 custom fields, a link to the author's website, and the author's photo. We could use, for example, Cadence blocks to create a listing or a grid, but we're not able to output custom fields using Cadence blocks. And this is what I alluded to in the introduction when I was talking about filling in the gaps of your regular tools. For example, the free version of Elementor doesn't allow us to create a listing of custom post types that includes custom fields either. So Loops and Logic extends that core functionality. When you activate Loops and Logic, you get 2 different menu areas. One is here off of Settings, okay, and it has links to the official site, to the documentation, and some help guides, as well as links for support. But the main place we're going to be working is this tangible high-level menu item. Starting from the bottom, you can export and import your templates and layouts if you want to use them on more than one site. If you have a lot of templates, you can use categories to organize them. Then there are these two pages here, styles and scripts. Scripts would be for your JavaScript, and then assets would be, for your JavaScript files or maybe even images. And then there's a location tab. This is where you would set where it would load. For example, you could do archive and books. And then whenever you added to the script resource or to the style resource would get loaded in that location. And you can add multiple locations. And you would use these styles and scripts options here when you wanted to load these assets in more than one place. Because say you had several templates that used the same scripts or the same style sheet, that way you wouldn't have to repeat the styles and scripts in each template. Let me show you what I mean. Here's the template. Let's look at the interface for a new template. You see, this is where you put your code, your HTML and dynamic tags. Here's where you put your CSS. Here's where you put your JavaScript. And here's where you put your assets. Whatever you create here is only going to load when that template is used. But for the styles and scripts, if you needed to use them in more than one place, then you could define them here and you wouldn't need to duplicate it in each template. So we're going to come back to this template. This is where we're going to do most of our work. But let's look real quick at the layouts area. And you see it's the same options that we had under templates, except that we have this location option like we looked at here. And this is what you use to have that theme builder type of functionality. So where you're loading your content templates, say for the single or archive. Okay, so first you set your theme position, which is content header or footer. And then you would add the location, which is entire site, home, route, archive, singular, taxonomy archive, author archive, date archive, search results, or 404 page. Okay, so those are the options for that. So now let's go and get started. I'm going to add a new template and we'll call this book listing. Okay, and if you remember, we looked here at some of the different loop types, like the post loop type. There are examples here, and I found an example that I modified for my use, which is this. This is a post loop, but because we're doing books instead of posts, I give it the post type, and then I want to order it by date descending. And paged, this is where you tell it how many records you want. So I'm going to get 3 at a time. Then I'm going to have an H2 heading tag, and this here is a loops and logic dynamic tag, and saying field title, which is going to be the post title. Okay, and if we go back and look at the documentation, here are fields. Right there I just grabbed the example here. This is a pretty simple thing. If it's working, we should get 3 book titles output. So I'm going to publish this. Then I'm going to go and add a new page. And I'll call it My Book Reviews. And then Loops and Logic has their own block for adding templates called the tangible template block. Okay, and you can just write your code here in the editor, but I want to find that saved template, which is book listing. I'm going to save this, and then let's go view the page. And it's working. Great, awesome. Loops and Logic, got these code editors here. There isn't any preview. So I'm going to keep the page open in this other tab. And as we make changes and additions, then we can come back here and make sure that we're on the right track and that things are working. Here we are back here, and the first thing that I want to do now is that my listing is going to have some rows, like a row for each book record, and then there's going to be 2 columns in the row. On the left there'll be the featured image, and on the right we'll have the title, the excerpt, a read more button, and the custom fields. What I've done is I've taken our starting loop with the H2 title, and I put it inside some divs. So here's the row, and then here's column left, column right. I just put the words featured image here for a placeholder, and then our dynamic tag for the title. Now this isn't going to come out the way we want without some CSS. So I created some basic CSS using Flexbox. What this is it's our outer div has a class of row, flex direction row, and then I've got column left is 20%, column right is 80%. So pretty simple syntax for Flexbox. And then I got a little fancy and added this kind of pseudo style here, which is saying that every even row, I'm going to give it a different background color. Let's update this. Now notice I made changes in the template and the style tab. You don't have to save for each of those. Just once will save any changes you've made. So I'm going to save that. We'll go back and refresh our page. And here are 3 records now with 2 columns. I think you're getting the idea how kind of build things up here. In the documentation, if you do those quick start guides that they have in the documentation, one of the things they mention is that for some of these fields, you can almost just guess them. Okay, so for excerpt, we could guess that the dynamic field would be field excerpt, and we could guess that the featured image would be field. This is what I did when I created the first one. I did exactly this, field featured image, and we'll see what happens. Refresh, and here's our excerpt. If we look at the documentation and we go and look at the types of fields we can use with our post loop, we see here's excerpt here. Okay, so we guessed right there. You know, my records have an excerpt defined, but if you didn't, you could use this auto true, and Loops and Logic would generate an excerpt for you, and you can give it how many words you want for your excerpt. But it didn't create my featured image. I guessed featured underscore image, and it's just image. So let's go back and let's change this to be just image and update and refresh. Okay, so that worked pretty easy. Now you see I have a problem. My images are different sizes, so I want to add some sizing information there. If we look at image, here's how to adjust the resolution or size of a featured image. Okay, so this is exactly how I figured this out. And you see that you can add the alt tag and a width tag. One of the things that you probably know about assets in the media library is that there's an array of information about each one. You have the URL, the file name, the size, the alt text, the description. For some of them, you might have a source set. So there are attributes for those, or remember there's also that loop for media items. But I'm going to grab this alt and width attributes, copy those, go to my template, and let's paste those in here. So it's going to get image, and then I want the width to be, let's say 180, and I'm going to guess that if it supports width, it's going to support height as well, and I want the height to be 260. Okay, let's update and refresh, and there's our featured image, our title, our excerpt. This is going really quickly. Now we want to do read more. So this tripped me up a little bit. When we were looking at the excerpt, it says that you can get a more, but all of this does is display, you know, your ... or read more, the text. It's not an actual link. So if you want to do a link, then you're going to need to add your HTML anchor tag. So let's go and we'll add an anchor tag. You see it's field URL. I'm giving it a class so we can position it with CSS and read more. Okay, so let's save that and let's go look here. Okay, this is what we have now. Now, I'm going to go into the developer tools for a minute because some point before we get too far along, we want to check and see how this is going to look on mobile. And so we can use the developer tools here. This isn't too bad, but you see this can get really small. I think at some point we want the image to go on top, to stack on top and just have one column instead of two columns. We're going to need to add some more CSS for that. So I'm going to change the CSS. And let me show you what I've done. This did say flex direction row, but I'm changing it to flex direction column, which means that we'll have columns instead of a row. And then I made the column left and column right each 100%. Okay, so this is going to now be stacked. And I added a media query, and I said the minimum width 769. So at 768 and below, we're going to have the columns one on top of the other. But then at 769 and above, we'll have flex direction row, which is what we started out with for our desktop, and the 20% and 80% columns. So you see kind of the change I made there. So let's update that. Let's go and refresh here. So it looks the same, but if we go to our developer tools now and start to change the size, this is what we get. So this is just a little close there, so we'll add a style for that. So remember I gave the read more this class, DCM link. So let's just add that in down here. All right, just some padding to the left to move it over a little bit. Okay, now it's time to add the custom fields. You note that I have this row with two columns and I have two custom fields. So I'm going to basically replicate the structure of row and two columns. So I'm going to add this under the read more button. I have my div, which I'm calling row custom fields. And then I have column left custom field and column right custom field. That's what I've got there. And now we're going to have some similar styles, and I'll add these down here. Here's my row custom fields, and it's a row, and it's 10% on the left and 90% on the right. Add a little padding there so that the link to the author's website will have a little margin on the top. And I'm going to have it just always be the same, whether it's mobile or desktop. Let's just go take a look at what that looks like. Okay, here's two columns, author's photo, author's website. Okay, and our read more got moved over what we wanted. All right, now let's add in the custom fields, and that might be enough styling, but if we need more, we can add it when we see the data. So if we go back to the Loops and Logic documentation, and go to integrations, there's a page here for advanced custom fields. And so here's the URL, which I'm going to use. And here's the image. Okay, and so it says for basic types, you can just display them with the field tag. And they have some examples here. For some of the tags, they give it ACF underscore and the field type and then the field name. If we go back to our template and the link to the author's website, remember when we did the link to the read more, we had to put it inside an anchor tag. So I did the same thing for the ACF field, right? And here's the URL field ACF underscore URL. So just like the examples, and then authors underscore website, which is the name of the custom field. Here on the outer, I'm using double quotes, and then when we need a quote inside, then you just use single quotes. So let's take a look and see if that worked. Okay, so here's the link to the author's website. I'm going to go ahead and click it, and that works. Okay, now let's get the author's photo. And you'll note that for some of these more advanced field types, they've got them in a loop. And remember, I was talking about how media images are in an array, and that you have a number of fields, so you need to loop to find the field you want. Here is the image example. I adapted that, and let's replace the author's photo here with this loop, and it's ACF image authors underscore photo, and then field URL. I gave it a width and height of 70 pixels. So I'm going to update that. Let's refresh. So we could move this down, this row could move down a little bit. So let me add a style for that. Let's go to this row custom fields, and we'll just add margin top 20 pixels. Take a look at that. All right, awesome. We're basically done, right? Oops, we've got more than 3 records, and we don't have any pagination yet. Go back to the documentation. Go back to loop features, and there's help for pagination. And here's an example, pagination scroll to top true. So I grabbed that example. I just put that pagination tag inside of a div so we can place it using CSS. And for styles, I just want to move it over to the left so it lines up with the other content there, which has a padding of 20 pixels. Refresh. Okay. All right. So this is all working, and basically we're done. Now, we've seen how easy it was to do with Gutenberg. Let's go now to our plugins. Let's activate the free version of Beaver Builder, Beaver Builder Lite. And now let's go add a new page. We'll call it My Book Reviews Beaver Builder. I'm going to publish this and launch Beaver Builder. We open up here, we see here's tangible template. Looks familiar. I'm guessing I can just drag this in, and it says use existing template, or you can write your own code here. But I want to use an existing template, and we're going to use the book listing. Okay, we're going to save this, and we're done. Okay, exactly like the Gutenberg version. Pretty nifty, huh? Pretty simple there to use it with Beaver Builder. Let's go now and let's switch to using Elementor, and we'll add a new page. Now, you know, you can usually go in and you would use the blank canvas or something, but I want to have the page title and I want to have the normal page layout. So I'm going to set these first and publish it like we did with Beaver Builder. Okay, and I'm going to go edit with Elementor now. Okay, and tangible template, here it is. We know what to do. Okay, use existing template, yes. Book listing. Okay, awesome. We see it's put the template automatically in a section, which you think since this is a new site, it would use a newer syntax for this. But anyway, let's go and just give some margin here, so it's not right at the top. Page layout, let's go theme. All right, let's update. And I want to go out. Let's check because I wasn't seeing the page title. That got switched to disable, so I'm going to enable that. And now let's go look at the page. Okay, looks just like the others now. All right, so now we've used Gutenberg, we've used Beaver Builder, and we've used Elementor. Now here we are on the Cadence theme. You know, we have this custom post type books. Let's see if we can use our template to create an archive to replace the theme default archive. All right, this is the default from Cadence. We can see it needs a little help. So let's go back now to the back end, and this time let's go to layouts. Okay, and add new. I'm going to call this one Book Archive. And let's go location. I want it to be content. And I want to check archive and book. Now we're here. We have this template here. We could copy all the code from the template panel and the style panel from our template right in here, or we can go to the documentation, look at the list of dynamic tags, and this is what I did. I found, oh, they have a tag for template. I bet I can include a template in my layout. And here's the syntax for that. So I just copy this. Go back to my book archive for where the template's going to be. I'm just going to include the template. And my template was called book listing. I like to put things in double quotes. I think it's not really required, but I don't think it's going to punish me for doing it. All right, let's go preview what we've got. All right, it's working. Okay, we got our template in there. We did not have to duplicate all the code, but it's full width here and we don't have our space at the top and whatnot. Okay, so we're on the right track. I'm going to go back here for a minute to location, and I'm just going to delete this for a minute. Okay, and click update. So we go back to our default theme archive. I'm not going to go into this as deeply as we could, but what I want to show you is when you are working with code and replacing a theme template, one of the things you can do to keep styling, so like we have the page header, the styling that comes with the theme. So what you can do is you can go to look at the source code for the page. This is a little bit intimidating, but basically I want to just kind of scroll down here until I start seeing our content. And this is where we start seeing the content. See, article, article. These are our book records here, which is what Loops and Logic is giving us. And what I want to do, I want to grab the code above this, okay, and I'm going to start right here where it says div inner wrap. And then if we go down past our articles, then we have the closing tag for inner wrap, some other divs, and this main tag. So I'm going to go back to our layout now. I'm going to add the location back in. And then where it says template here, I'm going to paste that code. And so here's this inner wrap, and we've got this hero section with our H1 books. So now we've got our template. We need to add these closing tags. So I analyzed that some and got the matching tags to close this off. And I'm going to update. I'm going to refresh now that we've reassigned the layout to replace the archive. Here we go, and we have our pagination. All right, so this is that same template, just like we used, that we were able to place inside a page or inside a Beaver Builder page or an Elementor page. We're able to use that code, reuse the code for our archive. So Loops and Logic, you can build up your library modularly and reuse codes. That's very efficient and very nice. Those are the things I wanted to show you in the walkthrough. Now for a little bit of discussion and conclusions. Loops and Logic has a lot of pros, but there are a few things to consider before using it, which some might consider cons. First, you use code. I imagine for some people, when they realized that code was involved, that their eyes glazed over and they were ready to dismiss Loops and Logic as a programmer's tool. The marketing for Loops and Logic says it's as easy as HTML, but of course it's harder than HTML because in addition to static HTML tags, you have all the dynamic tags, and each tag has different parameters and attributes. Still, I imagine if you're techie enough to build a WordPress site, then you can figure this out. Second, the documentation library is pretty extensive, but it can be difficult finding exactly what you need. I found that the search functionality was very helpful. The discourse forum is another good resource if you get stuck. Now for the pros. If you can live with some code and CSS, then you'll discover that Loops and Logic has a lot going for it. First is that the base Loops and Logic templating system is completely free. You can create layouts and templates from within the WordPress admin using an HTML-like syntax without using PHP or React.js. Tangible, the company creating Loops and Logic, will have a premium extension that provides extra integrations for LearnDash and other popular solutions, but the base plugin will remain free. The second thing is that the Loops and Logic plugin has support for advanced custom fields, both the free and pro versions. Most free tools don't support custom fields and reserve that type of functionality for premium only. So with the free Loops and Logic and free versions of ACF, you have a lot of options available for site building that are not available with core WordPress. Third, Loops and Logic is very flexible. While you can create content layouts for single and archive theme templates, it's not tied to the theme hierarchy. This means that you can create and place templates almost anywhere and include dynamic data in them. You can reuse templates by including them in other templates, and all of this flexibility extends to if-else conditional logic, allowing you to customize template output on the fly. Fourth, even if you don't use Loops and Logic for every site, because it's free, supports dynamic data, and is very flexible, you can keep it in your back pocket and use it for those times when there are gaps in your builder. In this walkthrough, we saw that you can use it with 3 free builder tools, Gutenberg, Beaver Builder, and Elementor, and it works the same in all 3. Tangible, the company behind Loops and Logic, is an agency with large clients. They created Loops and Logic for their own use. That means they have a vested interest in the plugin being robust and stable. That also means they aren't dependent on lots of marketing or big sales numbers. Awareness about Loops and Logic is spreading by word of mouth, and that's why I think this is something of a sleeper that will slowly make its way into the limelight. So that's my walkthrough and review of the Loops and Logic plugin. There's a text version along with all of the code used in the video available on the WebTNG website, along with other walkthroughs, reviews, and resources. Hope you found this video interesting and useful. Thank you for watching.